Hello everyone and welcome to BetVictor's Cheltenham virtual preview evening with myself, Richard Hoiles, Jim McGrath and Sam Boswell, and we're having lots of other people joining us over the course of the next hour and a half or so. Countdown is on. Sam, looking forward to it?
Yeah, hi guys. Certainly am. Thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully we'll find some really interesting insight. We'll talk about obviously the big topics, Champion Hurdle. I'm sure we'll get a discussion because I think I've never seen such a busy Cheltenham market in recent years in terms of having to reflect and react to news so quickly. I don't think that saga's quite finished yet either. But yeah, we're looking forward to it now, obviously getting closer and closer, and just hope the ground can just dry out a little bit perhaps.
Also, Mark Boylan with us from the Irish Field. Mark, very good evening to you. You can sit there and smile because once again, we seem to be a little bit up against it over this side of the Irish Sea, and Willie Mullins' running plans are going to determine a lot of these markets, I think.
Well, listen, we might have fun maybe at Cheltenham, but for journalists trying to get it out of Willie Mullins a couple of weeks before, it's not exactly like we have loads to write, is there? It's very much wait until Sunday morning before Cheltenham and hope that they're all still there. But yeah, look, it's a great position to be in. But to be honest, I'm one of those people I can never get carried away. Sport is cyclical, and I definitely see from looking at the sales, there's a real effort for a British fight back. You know, if you're losing the sales ring, you're losing on the track. And when I see more British trainers getting those nice horses, we saw Harry Derham put his hand in his pocket and get some nice stock, even at the Caldwell sale as well. I'm enjoying it while it lasts, Richard. It's nice to have it, but we're never getting carried away with ourselves.
Come on, Jim. We remember, the year Galmoy was the only Irish winner, I think, back whenever it was in the early 80s. Is this cyclical, or are we going to struggle for the foreseeable?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's slightly amusing, as very much the elder statesman on this panel tonight, someone in his 60s. The Irish always used to win the Supreme. It's called the Gloucester Hurdle. I think Vincent O'Brien won 12, and we're all agog because Willie Mullins has won 7. He's a novice really compared to Vincent, but no, everybody's looking forward to it. I mean, I just want to make one general point. It slightly nauseates me the way some of the English press, I get their point a bit, that there's too much emphasis on the Cheltenham Festival. The Cheltenham Festival is 5 or 6%. I don't know about Irish racing, but of British racing's annual turnover. It's 4 days and massive. It can't be understated what it does for the sport and how racing is spread around various parts of the globe because of it.
Right, we're going to welcome in our first guest now because that's an opportune moment, Jim, isn't it? Because winners are winners, but a Cheltenham winner is particularly special. So hopefully Jamie Snowden will be about to join us as if by magic. There you go. Look at that. How are you, Jamie? Good evening.
Hi, Richard. Yeah, good form. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Just pick up on Jim's point. Yes, we can all say, Cheltenham's too important, etc. When you set out at the beginning of the National Hunt season, is that where your eyes are really turned? Does that really add the gloss by being able to add one to your tally for Cheltenham?
Do you know, Richard, I think it does. We were so lucky to win at the Cheltenham Festival with our third ever runner there. And obviously, we had to then wait 9 years before our next winner, which was obviously You Wear It Well last year. And I think, Cheltenham is huge. It really is. It always has been. It seems to get bigger and bigger each year. And I think a lot of people do judge you on how you get on at Cheltenham.
Yeah, and you mentioned you've been that 9 years. I was just looking through your runners. But the simple point is, I don't think you had anything that really started sort of single figures or anything that had a chance. Indeed, your sort of expected wins over the course of that period since you started training is actually just a half a winner at Cheltenham. And that's the point, isn't it? It's very difficult to get a horse lining up that's got even a reasonable chance.
That's quite interesting, actually, Richard. Yeah, so that's right. Gino obviously started favourite for the plate last year, believe it or not. And the rain came. We had 3 runners on the day. That's Right, Gino, Garlaw, and You Wear It Well. And the rain came on the day. Didn't suit That's Right, Gino, but certainly suited You Wear It Well a couple of races later. So you go from one sort of disappointment to a huge thrill and high of winning a couple of races later. And that's what racing does give you. It gives you, highs and lows and disappointments and thrills and spills. And it's a roller coaster of emotions that every participant and every I suppose anyone who backs a horse feels that the roller coaster of emotions throughout the week.
We were remiss of us not to offer our condolences. You mentioned That's All Right, Gino, such a sad loss, and you mentioned the ups and downs with Garlaw being such a positive over that sort of period. So yeah, the connections, however, if that's all right, Gino, are like to be represented this year. So let's kick off. I'll spread the horses around the various people, but let's start off with Colonel Harry, because there's a choice of options at the moment. Where are you favouring?
Well, I hope it carries on raining for Colonel Harry. He loves soft ground. He really does. He's done very little wrong this year. He obviously won first time out. He only just got beaten in the Henry VIII. That's the Grade 1 at Sandown over 2 miles. But he definitely improved for going up in trip. Won the Grade 2 Towton up at Wetherby. But believe it or not, the one slight blip in his season was when he was third in the Scilly Isles last time out. But as I say, believe it or not, they were watering the back straight at Sandown, which with all the rain that's around at the moment, you would never really believe, would you? But the one slight disappointment was on better ground at Sandown last time out.
And Jim, I've been at Wetherby today. You'll know the Towton from trial of old. It'd be really good if that got a good positive kick, wouldn't it?
Well, of course, the distance has changed this year. I mean, he's a good, tough horse, and he was clearly a long way below form last time, so you tend to ignore that. But I suppose it's going to sound like a broken record all night. The Irish in the novice events, over hurdles and over fences in generally do look just a bit stronger than the English.
We're going to deal with those novice hurdles and novice chasers and focus a little bit more on the Irish with our second guest. Sam, have you got any prices for any of the Jamie Snowden horses? I mean, Colonel Harry, as I say, is in 2 at the moment, and we'll move on to Gar Law, who I think is likely to be supplemented to the Ryanair. So what prices have you got on those before we pick them up?
Yeah, we've got them scrolling across the bottom, Richard. One thing I would say is we need Jamie to do the supplementary before we can really offer the price. So I'd be quite tempted to hear the latest on Gar Law, hear how he's getting on. Colonel Harry's a big price of ourselves, 40-1 for either of those races that are potentially an option for him. But I know Jamie's got quite an interesting team as well. And the one horse I'd like to ask him about is his Grand Military winner, who's done the double now, Jamie. He's in the cross country, and I think he's in the ultra as well. Factor du Large, just been a really nice horse since you brought him out of Ireland.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. He came to us from the Gigginstown dispersal sale back in the summer, and we bought him with the sole intention of trying to win the Grand Military Gold Cup for my old corporal, who put together a partnership involved in him. And it was a good story, really, from 20 odd years ago when my corporal and I were out in a ditch in Northern Ireland, and he said one day he'll have horses with us and win these races. And here we are, sort of 25 years later, and we go and do the military double. So we certainly enjoyed that. He was bought to win those races, and he did that. Anything more is a bonus with him now.
Have you decided which route you might take, Jamie?
Lots of debates, yes, lots of debates. The question is, probably, in all honesty, it's going back to the Grand Military next January. So we'll have to rotate our route around that. But listen, it'd be incredible to think that we have improved him dramatically, and he goes on and ends up, being a star. But in all probability, we'll be looking to Sandown next January.
I'm interested in those discussions. Who pulls rank over whom? Have you still got the rank over the general? What's the pecking order?
Well, I was a captain, and Jordan was my corporal. So in the old days, he used to make me tea in the tank, but these days I'm making him tea. So I think he's done slightly better than I have.
So let's move on to Gar Law. I've read that the intention is to supplement for the Ryanair. Is that still your view? Yeah,
very much so, Richard. He obviously this time last year we had all the sort of fancy entries in, but he took a nasty fall in the Sky Bet Chase after winning the Paddy Power, and he probably wasn't quite the same horse through last spring, and certainly through the autumn. It took him a while to sort of really get his mojo back again, and so we didn't have any fancy entries in. We were just concentrating on getting him back to his best, and in the Hennessy or the Coral Gold Cup, he certainly showed behind That's Right Gino that he had a little bit of zest back, and he appreciated going back to 2.5 miles at Cheltenham when he won on Trials Day. But obviously the entries for the Ryanair went in before Trials Day, so we didn't have the entry in. But I think on the back of that, it makes sense to go there. He's to win any handicap at the festival, you probably got to have 7 or 8 pounds in hand, and if he's got 7 or 8 pounds in hand, he'll be bang up there with Banbridge and the rest of them in the Ryanair. He was only 5th last year, as I say, not beaten far, but he was not in the same form that he is in this year. So, no, we're excited to go there with him.
And just flesh out the rest of the team. As we say, it's very difficult to get a horse with a leading chance here, but you've still got a few that are in there: Gitmaker, Torneo, Hardy de Soy, and a couple of young horses, Iddywood, etc. How many of those are likely to line up, do you think?
Yeah, so Gitmaker, I'm hoping he's going to get in the Kim Muir. He's won 6 of his 10 starts. He's a lovely horse. He wants to go back left-handed. He didn't handle Ascot last time out, so we've been keeping him fresh and well. Had a couple of entries, but really we've been sort of hoping that he would get in the Kim Muir. So he should creep in at the bottom there, and hopefully he'll have a right chance in the Kim Muir, definitely. Hardy de Soy, he's a horse I like a lot. And again, if he gets in the Grand Annual, I think he'll have a chance. He's a very unexposed horse, decent novice chaser. So those two would be the sort of handicappers, really. And then we've got Colonel Harry, Gitmaker, Garlaw, and perhaps You Wear It Well. So we'll just have to see how she is as to see whether we go or not.
Yeah, just going to pick up on that. Obviously, she won at the Festival, the Mayor's novice race 12 months ago, but not the ideal run last time. Anything come to light? What were your thoughts?
Well, she was in season last time, actually, but I think there's more to it than that. I mean, she was in season, but I think there's more to it than that. She won the listed race at Wetherby, beating Lucia, who's only 12 to 1 for the champion hurdle, I see. She's beaten Lucia twice, and yeah, so we'll see what happens on the champion hurdle front. But the rest of the season, she hasn't quite gone to plan because everything's been delayed. She was meant to go to the Fighting Fifth. That was delayed a week. She was third in that. She was meant to then go to Sandown. That was cancelled. She was meant to go to Lingfield. That was off. She was meant to go to Ascot. That was off. She ended up going to Doncaster 3 weeks after an intended target. She was second in a Grade 2, ran a good race. Then she was meant to go to Warwick. That was then delayed. Just everything has been kind of out of sync. And you know yourself, Richard, with good horses, you try and target races and try and get horses ready for those particular targets. But we had her ready for the first target of the season, and everything else has been either delayed, cancelled, abandoned, moved, and it just hasn't rolled for her. So we'll just see where we are. We'll take stock and just have a see what Constitution Hill does.
You led me nicely onto Constitution Hill. I'm going to just use you as being the one trainer that we have on this evening, just to ask you. I know you're not privy, although to be fair, the stable have been excellent with their disclosures every with daily updates in the last 24 hours or so. As a trainer, when this sort of thing happens, what do you think the chances are of you being able to recover? Or is it just a question of you keep taking those blood tests, you keep scoping and just hoping things improve? So,
I mean, the straight answer is nobody knows. How long is a piece of string? You know, it all depends on every horse, all depends on every situation. You know, it's honestly, every trainer, with every runner, with every horse that's running throughout the season, goes through these kind of dilemmas, whether it be track washes, whether it be pus and feet, stone bruises, you know, blood issues, muscle enzyme issues, you name it. They happen the whole time. Now, obviously, Nicky's is far more high profile, and obviously you only get one champion hurdle, and you're dealing with the best horse in training. So the spotlight is obviously on Nicky in this regard. But these are all pressures and issues that every trainer faces every day of the week. It just so happens that this is very crucial for Nicky and for racing. And you know, I sincerely hope for one that he does get Constitution Hill back, because he is the best horse in training, and we need to see the best horses at our championship events.
I think we'd all echo those sentiments. Jamie, thanks for your time this evening. Good luck with those horses, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully back in the winners' enclosure for winner number 3. And yet, it's only half a winner you should have had in terms of the prices they've jumped off. So, having 2 during your career is still pretty good. Pretty good.
You're very kind, Richard. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, no problem at all. Jamie Snowden. Jem, I'm just going to come to you briefly about you've really let yourself open for this by being the senior member of the team. You've seen more than us in terms of horses that have had this sort of, scare. I suppose the issue is we all want the answer, but we don't know the individual circumstance. But clearly there must be a major concern, A, whether the Constitution Hill can get there, and B, even if he does, whether or not he would be able to do himself justice.
Yeah, you wanted to run, but you don't want him to run and see himself, see him subpar. He's Is he the most experienced trainer at Cheltenham? He probably is. Been training for a long time, had umpteen champions, used to dealing with the stresses. I'm sure he's tearing his hair out nonetheless. I know it's a cliche. He'll do what's right. We'll all have to wait and see. As Jamie has just, he outlined it brilliantly. I think every racing fan wants to see him, but equally, every racing fan only wants to see him if they're pretty sure the trainer's pretty sure he's going to be at his best, and you don't know. So it's wait and see, I'm afraid.
However, I imagine your office, Sam, when that news was coming through, when you're sort of semi-committed to Best Odds Guaranteed, which has produced some of the most amazing looking markets I've actually seen, with twos on each of two for anti-post. It must have been a bit of a puzzler.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. With every update, people have a different view. I know some competitors went slightly bigger than us, non-runner, no bet, and got pretty quickly filled in when the initial news came out. Today's drifted out again, and I can understand why. It's very tricky. I mean, I must say, I think I'd love to see him get there, because can you imagine the intrigue there will be around his SP on the day? And like I say, we're one of the few that do on the day Best Odds Guaranteed now. So you could potentially back him first thing and think, oh, people don't seem to want him, and he could potentially drift even bigger, and then he'll turn up and he's the horse that we all hope he continues to be. It's certainly going to be an interesting battleground, and I hope that's a subplot we get to see, because it would mean that he's going to run at Cheltenham. But yeah, it's not easy for us, but we'll probably not get too much sympathy, if I'm being too honest with you, Richard. But you want to be competitive in price. That's the thing that's really tricky at the moment.
Yeah, put it on the marketing budget, Sam.
You are rather
do that, Jim, to be fair.
Yeah, Best Odds Guaranteed does rather hamstring you at this stage. Mark, you've been very patient. We've been trying to talk up some of our 40 and 50 to 1 chances there. State Man, obviously, of course, he has still looked, hasn't he, head and shoulders above the Irish. A lot of the Irish people saying, I've seen him more regularly. He might have been a danger to win even 100% Constitution Hill. Do you think he has improved?
I think he has. I thought his last performance, I thought Bob Ollinger was back to form. I thought that was the very best you see at Bob Ollinger. And then State Man puts him away. I had that down as his best performance personally. But did I think it was enough to beat Constitution Hill? No. I thought he'd get closer, but I didn't think he beat him. It's funny. I was in a preview yesterday with Paul Townend, and the host was asking him, were you all rubbing your hands yesterday when this Constitution Hill news came out? He's like, no, we just want to get there ourselves. It's a horrible time of year for something like this to happen. So like nobody, for all that people might be thinking they're rubbing their hands. You just never know when you're going to open the door the next morning and find something else. But I'd be disappointed if he was able to beat Constitution Hill. I think probably Nicky, knowing the way he can be so, he loves these horses and he always does what he can to protect the horses. I don't think you're going to see Constitution Hill if there's any doubt. And I think if you do see him, you can take that as some degree of confidence. I just can't see them. They've been so conservative all year. It will go against what they've done all the way along to risk him at any point. So today's update wouldn't have exactly filled you with confidence, would it? But I think you're going to get a few that maybe roll the dice. Irish Point, it sounds like he's going to be in the mix to possibly have a go. Even before this news came out, Gordon Elliott was at his press morning on Monday, and he was very much mentioning it as a possible when Rob Corr have the two aces there. It's funny, if Constitution Hill did go, a horse like Irish Point, I could see really having a go trying to win the race. So, you think the first two places might be filled. Could he get picked off by something else that's trying to sneak on for a place? I think if even for putting forward an each way selection, I'd love to have more certainty as to whether we have the big two, because it just does shape it for me.
We're going to concentrate very much on the Irish in a second and welcome in our second guest. Just before that, Jim, we should point out that the supplementary fees are not as high this year for all of those major races. And so we do have the possibility. We've heard Garlaw might be supplemented for the Ryanair, and Mark's already mentioned Irish Point might head in the champion. I think he's actually entered. He wouldn't need to be supplemented. But there is a possibility that I think you need to finish fifth to get your money back as it stands in the champion hurdle. So we might end up with bigger fields than we might have anticipated, obviously, prior to the Constitution Hill news.
Yeah, I think this has come off the back of small fields, and I can see some of the logic behind it. But equally, I think, if you were to get, let's say, a big entry, an entry that, such as Mark has just referred to, if you're an anti-post punter, what's the point of playing anti-post if you know on a regular basis that horses can get in at the last minute? Now, you can turn around and say, well, you have supplementary entries for all the big races on the flat, for example, but the fees are quite high. It's a possibility. It's not something I've thought about deeply, Richard, but I'm just not sure that in principle. I mean, Cheltenham make a big thing of releasing their weights for the handicaps. We're talking about a different issue now, to stimulate interest, to get people betting, because that is what a lot of what Cheltenham is all about. But if this is going to be a regular thing, and if it was to come off, I think it might be as much of a detraction as an attraction.
It's an interesting view. I don't think everyone's really tweaked actually how deep some of these are. Looking at the King George over Christmas, I think you and I were having a chat about it. It was, it really has been cheapened compared to the normal amount. So just beware. That's all we're saying, is there might be a few additions. And the other thing we should point out, Sam, finally, before I move on to JJ Slevin is about to join us, is that you're only allowed one entry now, aren't you? So as we go through the week, you begin to get the pieces of the jigsaw in place, because by Sunday night whether or not Ballyburn will be running in the Supreme or not. Those decisions have to be made 48 hours out, and as you go through the week, you begin to see where the jigsaw pieces are going to fall.
Yeah, it's very true. I've got this mad theory, Richard, that we should have this all done and dusted on the Friday night before the festival in some big live televised event, because I actually think it'd be really interesting and a bit novel. But I appreciate trainers want to have as much opportunity as they can. I suppose the system as it is at the moment now probably is a little bit fairer. But before we introduce our next guest, Richard, I just want to mention we'll be putting up our first price boost of the evening, and it will relate to JJ Slevin's ride, probably in the Gold Cup in Fast or Slow. We're going to go 5-1, non-runner, no bet from 7-2. You'll be able to see that price. Just go to betvictor.com, check out the prices on the Gold Cup, and that'll be boosted there to 5-1 for at least the time JJ's on with us.
Okay, well, let's bring JJ straight on, so you can get on immediately. JJ, thanks very much indeed for your time. Must be an excellent time to be looking forward to next few weeks.
Yeah, sure. Really looking forward to it, Richard. Thanks very much for having me on, lads. But yeah, sure, the same as with the horses. We still have a little bit of time to go before we get there, and you're never there until you're on the horse at the start of your first ride for the meeting, and so hopefully all goes well and we get a bit of luck between now and then.
Well, I'm going to let Mark do most of the talking here, because he knows things far better than me. And Mark, I mean, I suppose Fast or Slow and Banbridge are the two that, obviously, from this side of the water, we would see as JJ's main chances. You've watched Fast or Slow versus Galopin de Champs in the various meetings. Can you see any way, based on the last run, that Fast or Slow and JJ can reverse the form?
I think preparation is probably the one word that's come up if you're hoping for the chance of a reversal. I think knowing what JJ will tell you more about the way this horse maybe peaks, but to look at a trend of how Martin Brazza's horses seem to be campaigned, it's like they explode into a new level of form when they get to their peak target for the season. And the Gold Cup is this horse's peak target for the season. You wouldn't have expected it to be the John Durkan earlier in the year that you get to see peak Fast or Slow. So you take major encouragement from that point of view. But I do think maybe on the other side of the coin, maybe when Galopin de Champs got beat in the John Durkan, did they maybe have to tighten the screws a little bit earlier, maybe with him, to get that big performance at Christmas, to get the ball bouncing in their favour again? And then we got to see him at the Irish Gold Cup, and I wasn't necessarily expecting to see that. To be quite honest, I think the 2 days of Fast or Slow has beaten Galopin. I don't think you've seen the best of him, but I think we could see the very, very best of Fast or Slow when you get to the Gold Cup. That's what makes the race so fascinating for me, but he does need to improve. There's no getting away from that. Like Galopin de Champs on Racing Post ratings, I think they gave him 184, the best Gold Cup winner since Caudo Star, they reckon. Like that's the lion's den that you're about to enter. But if Martin Brazza can pull off another Martin Brazza special, who knows? It could be a hell of a Gold Cup. JJ, I don't know. Could you see this horse stepping up another gear or two for Leopardstown?
Yeah, sure. I think there's every chance he can do that, and sure, I suppose ground is going to be a very important factor. And from what I hear from over there, there's plenty of rain around still, and the ground could be quite soft. So I think the drier the surface, probably the better our chance. Maybe I don't think I think Ireland acts on any ground, and it might be more of a hindrance to Galopin de Champs. He might be better on soft ground, but we'll just have to see. he's been training really well. He's in really good shape, and Martin is happy with him, I think. So look, we're just looking forward to it, and I suppose how the race is going to be run is going to be a big factor too, you know, and how the cards are going to fall is just going to be interesting, you know.
What would be the ideal for you, JJ, in terms of, you know, if you could set the race up with the others in the field to maximise your own chances? How would you like to see it run?
I should be hoping for a good, honest run gallop and a good, fair race, a nice, even flowing rhythm, and look at that's not too slow, not too fast, and you know, may the best horse win sort of scenario. That's going to bring out, you know, give everyone a fair shot at winning. And look at, if everyone's there to second last, let the best horse go ahead and win then. And it's a Gold Cup. I've obviously never ridden in one, but watched plenty of them and heard plenty about them. And they're usually a very fast run, honest run race. So we just have to play the cards as they fall, really, you know.
Jim, you've seen plenty Gold Cups wise. They are, as JJ said, you know, traditionally viewed as being attritional races where maybe the demands are even greater than lots of the trials that you see. How do you feel the Gold Cup stacks up? Did we see Galopin Des Champs silence all the doubters in the last run, or do you still feel that there might still be certain circumstances which make it more open?
Yeah, I think both yourself and JJ have sort of touched on the key issues for me surrounding the race. Galopin Des Champs is a good, a top class chaser, as we all know, but over an extended 3 miles, i.e. the Gold Cup, where there's strong strength in depth in the field, and as you say, use the word attritional. That's usually because a lot of the horses that take part, they are very good horses, but one by one they tend to drop by the wayside as the screw is turned and stamina becomes an issue. So the softer the ground, the more emphasis on stamina. Fast or slow, we know that handicap performance last year was hugely impressive. He subsequently confirmed that with his performances in open company. And you think, as JJ said, the faster the ground, or not firm ground, but the quicker the ground, the less emphasis on stamina, and the stronger his chance of beating Galopin Des Champs. But I think as stayers go, Galopin Des Champs is undoubtedly a top-class staying chaser, and he'd be very hard to beat.
Hopefully Jay is still with us. We've lost the vision bit, which we're blessing if you lost mine, probably, for most of the people watching in. JJ, you mentioned the ground, Banbridge. Presumably you're going to want some drying ground there as well. Would that be ideal? Yeah, maybe we have lost JJ.
Sorry, lads, I just didn't get that there.
That's all right, no worries. Just moving on to Banbridge.
No, hello.
The drying ground suit there. I'm not sure we've actually got JJ at the moment. So if that's the case, we'll come back to him. I'll start with you, Mark, and then we'll see if we can reconnect. Yeah, Banbridge, you always feel of being a sort of early and late season horse. And as a result, really deep ground, not necessarily completely against him, but bounces off the spring ground or seems to.
That's the way they seem to speak about him as well. I think even if it did turn up particularly testing, it wouldn't shock you if he did wait for entry. They're very patient with this horse entirely. So I don't know, maybe JJ will shed more light on that, but obviously you hope he gets there. But yeah, at the price as well, I mean, his very, very best form, is it as good as the very best form of some of his rivals? Like even when he won at entry last season, he's got Saint Roy in pretty close proximity. You know, Visionarian is in the million miles off him as well. I don't know what price they'd be in a Ryanair necessarily. So, you know, he beat Pictorial last time, good performance. He's a really likeable horse. I do like him, but I just feel the vibes over here with Envoy Allen are particularly strong. I have to say, having done a few of these previews, that camp seemed to be really sweet where he is. And he's a funny horse, and when the market is strong on Envoy Allen, he runs very much accordingly. Last year at Cheltenham, he was seriously well punted and duly rewarded him. And when it's the opposite, it can tell a different story. But I thought at a price, maybe one that could go well is Phil Dore here. Obviously, hit the headlines at a very, very big purchase price at the Caldwell sale, but bumping into El Fabiolo, who's going to be odds on for a champion chase, bumping into Dino Blue, who'll be odds on for a mare's chase. I just thought around 12 to 1 or that sort of territory, he had the potential to run well. I asked Gordon Elliott earlier in the week, is it a given that Jack would ride conflated in this? And he said, it's not a given. He says, it wouldn't shock me if he rode either. So I took that as a vote of confidence too. But just at a price, knowing that he will definitely go there, he might be a player. But just the ground with Banbridge is the biggest, for me anyway, is the biggest hiccup towards him him in a player here.
Not sure they've got JJ back, but I'll try. JJ, good ground, Banbridge, important?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, massively important, Richard. He's a real spring horse. Obviously, a Diana over presenting mare, bred for a real sound surface, and his wheels will spin on a slow surface. So we're just praying for things to dry out, really.
Yeah, forecast seems to be we're going to get another big douse of rain tonight, going into tomorrow morning. But after that, middle of next week just appears to be slightly better. So it just might require a fair few days to get to the ground exactly where you'd want it. Mark, again, I'll let you probably handle with JJ some of the other rides. But JJ, what else have you potentially got during the course of the week? Because obviously the association with the Mull Ryans gives you a few potentially nice horses that I had interest. Luck in the Morning, I suppose, is one of the obvious ones in the Boodles. Would that be your ride?
Yeah. So the plan is for me to ride Lark in the Morning. Obviously, look, he's getting in there down the bottom. Same story, a little bit like Banbridge, got stuck in the ground in Leopardstown there at Christmas, and hopefully he'll improve for a bit of a sounder surface. And I feel that his jumping might be a bit sharper on a better surface. Can be a little bit careful when it's a bit softer underfoot. So same story. We just need for the better ground to bring out a bit of improvement in him in order for him to reach what we think his potential is. So just look at, we're going there hoping more than saying he's got a right chance, really. That's what I think of it, to be honest with you.
Any others, Mark, that JJ's got, or anything else around those races?
I might just ask you, JJ, about O's Partier in the Boodles as well. If you didn't have Lark in the Morning, I know he's been disappointing a couple of times since, but seemed to be kind of decently regarded when he came over from France originally. He'd be a big price in the Boodles, but Martin Brazel again, you can't underestimate him entirely, can you?
Yeah, if you look at Mark, he's been a difficult one, really. Not an easy ride at all. First day was a keen, without being really, really bad, and ran well in Galway. Probably doesn't find a huge amount off the bridle, which is maybe a bit of a negative going to Cheltenham. Literally ran away with me, and Fairy has got an awful right off him that day.
It's not too often I see that, JJ.
Sorry?
It's not too often I see you getting run away with. That's why I'm asking. I'm only wondering, could be.
No. That's the problem. He's just he does the things the wrong way. His old mindset not really allowing him to do things the right way. Ran all right in the race at Christmas time, the Grade 2, and then the next day was a bit disappointing again there in the Dublin Racing Festival. So here, whatever ifs and ands we have about Lark in the Morning, he needs a lot of things to go right for him in order for him to run a race in that regards. The way to the start, the prelims, and then the race itself. 24 runners, we've been dropping them in, trying to get them to switch off. 24 is a lot of horses to pass in Cheltenham, so he's not going to be simple now.
You're filling me with confidence, JJ. I might ask you about two more better chances. Nürburgring in the Triumph, maybe, and Solness in the Grand Annual too. For Joseph's have chances.
Yeah, so the Brosnan lads obviously own him, the Sands family. Actually, look, I'm happy enough with Nürburgring, the place he's in. Horses improving away. Good horse on the flat now. And Geldon has worked a treat for him. He hasn't done a whole lot wrong. He's not 100 miles behind our best juveniles in Ireland. And obviously the English ones may be stronger. You see the Henderson things. Henderson is a very good horse. So I think he's got an each-way chance in the Triumph. He won't mind the dig. And he liked the track there on the Friday, big staying track. And he definitely stay. So he's at a price. I think he's got a little each-way squeak. And then Solness there in the Grand Annual. He ran well the last day off a revised mark. He obviously went up for winning that race in Fairy House. Ran well in Leopardstown. I say it probably is as he is. I don't see any more improvement coming out of him, but he's a good hardened horse, and he'll give his run off his mark, and the race will suit him. They'll go hard. He's an honest jumper, and look, he'll hang in there and he'll fight his corner anyway. So look, these could run into a place hopefully. you know. So then I think I've got Colin Mustard in the Champion Hurl. Look, it's going to be a big price. Worked very well actually today up in screen there. I set up on him. Look, at again, like Champion Hurl, God knows what's going to happen, and if you're not in, you can't win. And he might run on up the hill and pick up a bit of money as well.
Yeah, he's an interesting horse. He ran really well in the Mall Bottle. What was it, 12 months ago? This weekend, actually. So, a few there. And finally, I suppose from my side, looking at the winners, Champagne Classic 2017. You must look back with that day remarkably fondly. What's your memories of your first Cheltenham Festival winner?
Yeah, that was really, really good, Richard. So look at it, kind of unexpected. To only got the ride like the day before at 10 to 10 or whatever time it was. Andrew Ring actually rang me, who was connected to Gordon, and he was riding something else in it maybe, and I ended up just chance phone call to Gordon, picked up the ride. They told me to ride in mid-division, bit of light, Gigginstown as they want, and won well, and turned out he was obviously a lot better than the handicap. He went on the Punchestown and won a Grade 1 the next day, but I should look at this, like, that chasing that feeling of winner there was unbelievable, and so we're still chasing it again. You know, we want to feel those feelings again. You know.
Yeah, and you did manage to win with Band of Outlaws in 2019 as well. So it's so basically, I get the impression from this that you are definitely not doing any sort of rain dance for the festival. It seems that at least 2 or maybe 3 of your leading horses would be much better suited by a dry build-up. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you know, that's big. They'd be a big plus to me anyway. So I'm just hopeful. It's not like it was years ago. It does dry out quite quick, and into the spring there, the temperatures can rise quite quickly and dry everything up. So we're just hoping, you know.
Just one quick one, JJ. Home by the Lee in the Stairs Hurdle as well. An open race.
Yeah, he's in good shape as well, Mark. Look, we're playing around with the ideas of putting headgear on him again, and wouldn't be. Look, it could work now. He schooled the other day, and he schooled quite well in them. Look, he's run well in the last 2. Made a bad mistake early last year, which wasn't like him. He just wasn't concentrating. I felt looking up into the grandstand, and the ground won't bother him. It's an open race, and same story. He's 20 to 1. He could be placed, you know.
Great stuff.
JJ, thanks for this evening, and all the very best on the build-up. Hope the sun's shining, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you.
JJ Slevin.
Thanks, JJ.
Slevin.
Thanks very much, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. All the very best.
Thank you.
JJ Slevin there, talking about Fast or Slow and a few of the others. Let's stay with the Irish theme, Mark, just for a bit. We'll try and fill in the gaps around our various guests. We've got about 5 minutes or so before Gavin Sheehan will join us as well. Let's just unpick some of the leading fancies. Ballyburn, I suppose, holds the key to both the potential novice races. Do you think that's fair? Is Willie like? I mean, second guessing Willie, as you said at the top, is virtually impossible. But the temptation must be, from his point of view, with Cool Hill in particular, that he looks a 2-miler to split them. What would your personal preference be to send Ballyburn?
I think if Willie Mullins wants to get the week off to a winning start, which you know he loves to do, and get the pressure off early, I think Ballyburn should go to the Supreme, and I think he'll win. I think he'll win either race. I think he's a standout novice hurdler we have here by a fair way. Even the talk about him coming into the season, I think Willie actually mentioned at Christmas that his 3 best novices / juveniles that he had this season were all beaten first him up. Ballyburn, Mirrors or West, and Ethical Diamond, he thought were the 3 best he had coming in, and they all got turned over. But to me, if you didn't run Ballyburn and Tully Hill flies the flag, I'm not totally convinced. He's a good horse, absolutely. He's making strides. His jumping is not quite as ideal as you'd like for a cutthroat Supreme. You don't want to lose half a length here or there. And I'd also maybe say the turnaround as well. It's 23 days from Punchestown when he won last to the Supreme. And I think since 2005, I was looking at this, about 115 horses have tried a layoff of that short in the Supreme, a Barry and Bingham or Bartlett, and only 2 have won. One of the 2 was LeBake, who effectively refused. So you've got one horse going for you since 2005 has been able to do something like that. And even Willie Mullins, when you look at his record with hurdlers and chasers off that type of layoff at Cheltenham since the turn of the millennium, I can only find 4 that have won. One was Covega, and she just completely outclassed her rivals. One was Burning Victory, who shouldn't have won a Triumph Bar Goshen coming down. And the other 2 were handicap hurdlers with a 30-pound in hand, Wicklow Brave and Don Poli. So I just wonder, could I see Tully Hill being in one of those brackets? I'm just not quite sure. So I think Ballyburn, if he wants to get off to win and start, I think he'll win either race. And I think, we'd be shocked if Paul Townend wasn't on him in either place. But just, is Tully Hill really the one that you plant the flagpole there and say, let's go? I know it's his only entry, but GP Park aren't stuck for a few bob. I'm sure they could stick him in the Berry and Bingham if they wanted to do that and really upset Jim with a supplementary entry.
Jim, what chance have we got in the novice hurdles? I know you and I had conversations, or you pointed out to me how lowly rated last year's crop of British novice hurdlers were come the end of the season. Jericho de Repenay, you have to look a little way down to find too many involved in the Bearing Bingham, and obviously the Albert Bartlett is a little bit more of a race unto itself. But if we're looking across the novice hurdlers, Sergino, I suppose, stands out in the Triumph, if you include that as a novice hurdle, which it is, of course.
Yeah, he looks a horse of a very high standard. And Willie Mullins, of course, we haven't seen him yet, but he actually trains the horse that was second to Sergino when they last ran in France. It was also owned by the Donnellys as well. So I don't know whether we're going to see that this week as well. But with regard to the novice hurdlers, you couldn't help but be impressed by Ballyburn last time. The only slight reservation is that he beat a horse who'd run at 2.5 miles last time, and he outstayed him. He's very strong. I'm not saying he's slow, relatively slow, Ballyburn. He's not. But essentially, he's a strong galloping 2-miler, but with the ground likely to be very much on the soft side. He sets a good standard. He has a good cruising speed. He's been very strong at the end of his last 2 races. He must be hard to beat. I'm a little more encouraged by Tully Hill than Mark. I think the point Mark rightly made about his jumping, it was better last time than it had been earlier on, also applies to some extent to Mystical Power, who's an interesting horse, obviously, as well. And in the same colours as Mystical Power, we've got Jericho de Repenay. I mean, you and I were at Newbury early in the year when I'm sure, was he something like 4 or 5 to 1 for the Supreme after beating half a dozen donkeys at Newbury? Now, he did win really well.
We were 6 to 1, Jim.
You were 6. Oh, sorry.
Defenders. There you go.
Proper judges at BetVictor. They knew. Anyway, he's 9 to 1 now for anybody that's interested. But having sort of had a bit of a poke fun at him, if you actually look at his recent form, and I was at Doncaster when he ran and won that, it was a pretty good race, but there went no gallop, and they were all in a heap. Even though he won, I thought, well, they're not much. But last week's events at Kempton certainly gave it a couple of boosts, and he almost certainly is a decent horse. But I think you're looking for him to find £7 to £10 to beat the likes of a peak form Ballyburn. And when I think back to it, Nicky's won this 3 times, Willie's won it 4 in the last 10 years. And then there have been 3 others, Barry Connell, Tom George, and Gordon Elliott have won the other 3. And I think back to Nicky's horses, and I think, does he look anything like Alty or Jericho de Repenay? Not for me. So I find it hard to look past Ballyburn if he runs.
Okay, so a brief look at the novice hurdles. I'm going to break off for a moment because our final guest was actually with me at Wetherby during the course of this afternoon and has pulled in on the journey home because he's heading south while I was heading north. So hopefully Gavin Sheehan will be able to join us. You pulled over okay there, Gav? I'm not sure he can hear us at the moment. He's muted as well.
Oh, we can see him. There we go. Just needs to unmute.
I don't know whether I can't. Yeah,
he's on mute. Yeah.
Send him a message, Sam. I can't see his lips moving either at the moment. So we'll come back to Gavin in a moment. Just while we do that, let's just round off the final novice hurdle we didn't speak about, which could potentially be an Anglo-Irish clash. What have we got? Jade de Grugy, Brighter Days Ahead for Ireland. I can hear you, Gav. There you go. How are you? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
I can hear you. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I've taken it off mute.
Yeah, you're off mute, but you obviously can't. I don't know whether you can hear us, which is going to make things a little bit tricky. I'll try to hold you for a second or two more. I've got you off mute. Can you hear us at all, Gav, or not? I think the answer to that's no at the moment. So let me pick up where I left off, and we'll
We on?
There we go. Hi, Gav.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Gav, can you hear us at all?
Very good. Yeah, it must be. Maybe it's my signal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, you're probably the lucky one. Are you okay? I'm not sure Gavin can hear us at the moment, so we'll come back to him in a moment when we try and sort that out. Go back to what I said about the Mayor's Novices, then, guys. Mark, have you got any preference between Brighter Days Ahead, who's been well touted in the preview circuit? I think
it's I'm actually a huge fan of Brighter Days Ahead. Have been from word go, but as a backer over. After she won her second bumper last season for this race, the last month has not been any way comfortable to hear this sort of talk. It's not helped in any way. I've been turning over in the bed a few times, getting antsy, but to hear the confidence with which someone like Jack Kennedy speaks about her, and Jack Kennedy is not someone that speaks a huge amount at the best of times. To see the smile on his face when he came in at Navan last time, it was. They really they adored his filly. I know the big takeaway line from Gordon's press morning was that he said. One of the best judges that they have in the yard, Shane McCann, who rides a lot of work, has told them from a fair way out he thinks this could be the very best horse they've ever had there in Colentra. Don Cossack and all, male or female, this could be as good as any of them. And her CV doesn't entitle her to have anywhere near that type of praise. She's a lovely prospect. She's bred to be a champion. Half to Caldwell, Potter, Mighty Potter, Indiana Jones, French Dynamite. What a mare that dam is to produce all those from 5 foals. But the way they talk about her is just something a little bit different. And I'm not really enjoying the pressure build-up, Richard, but she is very, very good. Jade de Grugy is very good too. I think in a standard year, any of Dice Artinos, Jade de Grugy or Brighter Days Ahead would win this race. But I think even the talk from Colentra is getting some of them in Willie's a little bit going, what are we going to face here? But personally, I'd love to see Fergal O'Brien have his first Cheltenham winner. I just wouldn't really like to see it in this one.
I was going to say that was said with a forked tongue there.
Yeah.
That's got another day.
I'm not going to lie.
It's actually, to be honest, Jim, it's actually quite a good renewal, isn't it? Probably the strongest we've had in that regard. Do you think?
Oh, I think it's a really good race. I mean, if you watch Brighter Days Ahead's replays, I mean, Mark's obviously seen her live. I haven't seen her live. There's just an efficiency and ease about the way she does things. She's a brilliant jumper. I mean, Dysart Enos is no question she's a good filly. And obviously, Jade de Grugy is an unbeaten filly from top class connections, but they will have to be every bit as good as the best previous winners of this to beat Brighter Days Ahead. I think she sets a strong standard. And I sent Sam a text last night. What we're going to do for this week, and I said, well, my idea, the best favourite at the minute, there's a half a chance of getting some odds around her. She's set around 7-4. It's Brighter Days Ahead of the shorties. So I'm looking forward to seeing her go.
I'm glad Jim also did send me an alternative option for his nap at the end that we may well boost. So stay tuned for that because it's a double figure price, to be fair. I did quite agree with Jim's sentiment. So, yeah, I might try and dodge that one, Jim. We'll have to see. I am also multitasking, trying to give Gav a bit of technical support here. So we'll see if we can get him back on. I think the technical wizards at Newbury are going to give him a quick call and try and sort him out. Oh, here we go. Hey, Gav, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you all.
Hey,
hi, Gav.
Well done.
Sorry
about
that. I'd say it must have been my signal. I've had to get into the car to find the next services.
No worries. How are you with the Weatherby today? Took a fall when you looked like to win one of the races. You're okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Yeah, I thought I was going to go away and win that race, but unlucky for me, it tipped up at the last. But not to worry.
I suppose we should
tomorrow.
start. Well, you've got to stay in one piece between now and then. That's one of the big things. We've obviously had a chat to Jamie a little bit earlier on, so that overlaps with a few runs. So we will come back to a couple of those, particularly thoughts on Garlaw. But I suppose we should start with Hewick. Should point out at this stage, the ride still is unclear, but he was a hell of a spare to have picked up at Kempton, and he would be a hell of a spare to pick up in the Gold Cup this time around as well.
Oh, it would be. It'd be absolutely fantastic. I've never rode in the Gold Cup, so it would be great to get the ride. But he's I got a great spin off him the last day. He jumped well enough and everything. I never thought I was in the race, and suddenly the race won. It's kind of a funny race for me, but look, he's won a King George, and he's done well.
I mean, I must admit, Shark is an excellent interview, and he doesn't, hold back with the admiration in which sometimes he holds his horses. I have to say, we had him on the ITV podcast, and he was eulogizing about how this horse picks up and suddenly changes gear and this sort of thing. And when you were pushing and scrubbing for most of that circuit, I was thinking, well, Shark, you really excelled yourself this time. And then, amazingly, really, for a staying horse, it just seems that he came alive. Could you feel that, or did they just start coming back to you? Or what was the change that suddenly, as you say, a race you couldn't win to you'd won almost comfortably?
Yeah, but it was kind of, look, it was a strange one. And going out there, I obviously look back at every race that he's ran in, and he's always seemed to travel well enough through his races. And Shark was saying he's got plenty of speed, don't worry about speed. And all of a sudden I was going out in the race thinking I've got absolutely no speed. There's one thing the Shark said, he said, don't worry about it. And I was worried. But yeah, I was never in the race. I was always just flat out and just couldn't really. I suppose if I stayed in 30 mile an hour speed, I probably stayed in that and probably did pick up from the back of the last. Turning down the back, going around the bend, I said, I'll nick a bit of fourth here. I said, it'd be a great run. But it wasn't until going to the second last that Nico came. He obviously got unseated. And when I went by him on the ground, all of a sudden I did feel like a new lease of life underneath my lad. And he really picked up, and he put the race to bed fairly quickly at the same time.
Mark, he has been a remarkable horse, hasn't he? In terms of his globe-trotting antics, the fact that he was obviously purchased for virtually nothing. They would turn down lots of large offers. I think Shark said it cost him more to stay in the hotel to collect the Eclipse Award for leading horse of the Jumps Horse of the Year in the UK in the US than it actually cost him to buy the horse. I mean, it is a phenomenal story.
I think the best news for Shark will be if he wins the Gold Cup that the Monday afterwards is a bank holiday in Ireland, because I think the country will be shut down for a good while if he does happen to do it. I'd say the horse will see every pub in Ireland, and you know what, fair play. If it does happen, it'd be a great story for us over here for racing. Just when you are in the era of the super trainer, of the huge money purchases, point to point, 6-figure stuff, it is fantastic to see a story like this come along. And look, Shark he's some man. He is by nature a confident type of guy when it comes to his horses. And a few times he's told us along the way this is a certainty and it's gone wrong. But other times he stuck his neck out and Sky Ace, I can remember clearly, my colleague at the time, Brian Sheehan, in the paper, he told him, you can put this in print, this will win. And we're thinking, oh God, goes and wins a grade one. He can pull them out of the place. I don't know how he does it, but fair play to him. And they've been ambitious in campaign, this horse. They've gone to America. I'd say he would love to travel the world with this horse if he had the opportunity to do it. And he's a horse of a life. I don't think he'll win a Gold Cup this time around, but if he did, there is no result that I'd happily to back the loser against in the Gold Cup against Hewitt.
Did you get involved in any of those celebrations, Gavin, or did you do what they always used to say in the old days? Our reporter made his excuses and left before it got too bloody.
Yeah, no, I didn't get involved in anything. I would have loved to gone out at a celebration with him. I'm sure it would have been a good one. But I spoke to Shark the next day. He was on his way home, and he said that they were going to celebrate him when I was back home. If I was back home between Christmas and Cheltenham, that he'd certainly go out and get me a pint. We'd have a good old celebration for it, because look, it is kind of the rags to riches story. It shows to everybody that anybody involved in a horse, it could come good and come right for them. And I spoke to Shark obviously in the meantime, and his plan was to go over to Australia and go for the big race over there. So he does want to travel the world, but unfortunately the flights weren't right for him. So his plan now is the Gold Cup and the Grand National.
Interesting. Australia might have been the first choice. We spoke to Jamie a bit earlier. We won't go through all the same horses, but maybe a couple. Garlaw, the obvious one. Jamie sort of confirmed that they're thinking of supplementing, or that's going to be the decision for the Ryanair. Do you think you'd have the sort of class in an open year for that race?
Yeah, he was very disappointing at the start of the year, and we were scratching our heads, to be honest. I used to ride him from the front before when we first started chasing him, and he seemed to really love it and enjoy it. And then Johnny rode him for a time, and he was ridden in behind. But I don't think he really probably enjoyed that, and it's now popping him out in front and going a nice gallop out in front. He seems to enjoy that a bit more, and you never know what this lad's got underneath the bonnet, because he's a very talented horse, and if he can get his jumping spot on the day, he's definitely got a big chance.
And Jamie also mentioned You Wear It Well, start question marks as to whether or not she would head there. She just was flat last time. Jamie said she was in season, but he wasn't inclined to blame that completely. He was leaning towards the ground. What were your sort of immediate post-race comments?
Never happy, never travelled. She's normally a bit keen and takes you forward, and there's plenty of fight in her belly, and never seemed to have any of that the last time. And I was beat, probably going past the winning line, and I was struggling from there. She obviously made a mistake, the middle one down the back, but look, she's tipped away. That wasn't her. She wasn't at her best. When it goes wrong like that, you can blame so many things. If she's in season and everything like that, there's everything to blame when it goes wrong, but it never happened. Let everything be wrong. It just never happened. But she just hasn't had a great campaign this year. She was targeted for the Weatherby race, and she obviously won that, and we've tried to plan out races and map out races for her, and they've all been called off and one thing or another, and just hasn't gone to plan this year. Not as smooth as last year. Last year went very smoothly for her, but I'm not sure. She's. I know she only finished third the last end, didn't run a race, but to go to Cheltenham off the back of that would be tough enough, I think.
Yeah, have you sat on her at all since?
No, I haven't sat there. No, I only school her, and she's normally a bit feisty, but I'd imagine I might pop in on Wednesday and have a sit in her, and we'll probably make a plan from there.
Brilliant. And just finally, because we don't want to keep you from your journey home for too long, she's the last of your three Cheltenham winners so far. We go back to Cole Harden, just looking back in, was it 2015, I think, something like that. And then you had a wait of sort of 5 years. Again, it wasn't that you had loads of nights with a chance, but just wondered what it was like, particularly on that very first time winning on Cole Harden, and what it means to have that festival victory.
Yeah, I hadn't had many rides at Cheltenham Festival. And that one, I fancied him. I did really fancy him. Thought he had a great chance. The ground came right because it was nearly good to form. And the quicker the ground for him, the better. I can remember walking the track. I was smiling from ear to ear, thinking this is all happy and Larry and everything's going great. But then to ride in the race itself, that was just a thrill. Let it just be the race itself. That was just a thrill because he was, I can remember just popping out, going a strong old gallop. He was on song, and I remember just after jumping 4 out, I was going to turn up the hill just before we get to that bend, and I was like, oh, please meet this one on a nice stride. And he did. He went down and pinged it, and then all of a sudden you get to the top of the hill and you're like, fill up there for a couple of strides, and then let him roll on down the hill. Letting him roll down the hill, then I'm praying nice stride. You meet that on a nice stride, wing that, then we got a long run to the last, and I can remember just waiting as long as I could and as long as I dared, I suppose. He was a strong stayer, and kicked off the bend, and I felt him pick up, and thinking, oh, if he's picking up, maybe I went too slow. And I remember actually watching reviews after with Luke Harvey saying that I went too quick and everything, with the scorching gallop, never keep it up. But when I kicked off the bend, I was just obviously praying that I meet this one on a nice stride again. You know, and he went down and met it on a real nice stride, a long stride. And I just remember asking him when I landed, I just pushed him all the way to the line, and I had that feeling this winning line isn't coming quick enough, and I'm going to get pipped on the line. But to win a Grade 1 for my first ever Cheltenham Festival winner was one of the big ones. That was my first Grade 1, first festival winner. But there's 4 big races of the Cheltenham Festival, and to win one of them it was very special and something that I'll never forget.
It's interesting you can describe it with so much clarity, because a lot of people say their first wins, you know, it all goes by in a blur. I mean, you almost took us alongside you there from the top of the hill. You can still recall it in that much detail and your feelings. And as you say, the next jump has to be as good as the last one, and what can go wrong?
Yeah, because he was known, like, he kind of had a couple of grabs in him and a couple of steps where he'd guess and come up a little bit early. But yeah, I remember just praying that I don't meet it on that in-between stride. So that's why you're praying that you meet it either on a long stride or know that you're going to get in tight. But if you meet him on the in-between strides, he could take a chance and come up a bit early and land on it. So that's why I was doing my praying. But he was always an exciting horse to ride. I remember the very first time that I rode him in a bumper, and he ran away at me around Worcester. But that was on better ground. But he was always a thrill to ride anyway.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gavin, so much for your time this evening. Good luck if you get to ride Hewick. It'll be fantastic to ride in another one of those big 4s. I suppose, you know, as you say, it's very hard to get on a leading fancy, but it'd be just good to be able to tick that one off to say you rode in a Gold Cup.
Oh, definitely. Look, it's ask any jockey, they always say that they'd love to win the Gold Cup. To riding it is going to be great for me. Great experience, and hopefully I do get to ride him. And you know, if the ground was good, he'd have a bit of a chance. But if it's not, I think he's very much ground dependent. So, yeah, look, I'll be crossing my fingers and hoping I get the call.
Excellent. All the very best, and safe journey home.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Gavin.
Cheers, Gavin.
Thanks to Gavin
Thank
Sheehan,
you.
who, as I say, was in action at Weatherby today. Good rest of the journey home. Right, in the time that remains, we're going to try and fill in the gaps. We've done most of the novice hurdles, so let's deal with the novice chases, which I think in many ways, Jim, are just about open as we can. I mean, one of the great things about the Dublin Racing Festival is sometimes it can consolidate your views. In terms of the Arkle, which is where we'll start, it just seemed to muddy the waters even more. And the horse that was beaten that day as favourite, and quite well beaten, Marine Nationale, is still the market leader.
Yeah, well, he's 2 appearances over fences. Apparently now some people that weren't that impressed with him first time, yet my reaction, and I thought the general reaction at the time after his debut, that it was a flawless start. But he was very disappointing last time. I think I'm right in saying, Mark will correct me, he had a tongue strap on last time. So whether there's been an issue with his breathing, you just think that way, don't you? And he stopped quickly. Listen, it's the first setback for a horse like that. He's rare ability, we know that. And if he was back to the form that we saw on his chasing reappearance, he'd undoubtedly take a lot of beating. But you have got that if. I agree with your general point, Richard. I think if you move him to one side, that you've got some nice English horses, good, pretty consistent horses. Have we got stars? I'm not sure that we have. And in a hard-looking race, if you're not going for Marine National, if you gave me a bet, I'm assuming he's going. Quilixios is a good jumper. Of course, he's a past Triumph winner. He's obviously had issues, but he looks overall to have taken quite well to chasing. His blip was over 3 miles, which is strange that they upped him to that trip, but I could see him running well.
Mark, what was the general consensus after the Dublin Racing Festival about who was then leading the pecking order? Because the thing about Ilete Toy is that he just doesn't look like a chaser physically, but he wins. So, you know, but his runs at Cheltenham haven't been up to the level he'd shown domestically.
I tend to agree, Richard. if there's any division that you come away, you say usually from the Dublin Race Festival with clarity, this was the one division that would leave you going to the bar and trying to avoid solving this. Marine Nationale, having spoken to a few people who would maybe be better judges of pre-race stuff than myself, few of them felt that going to post, he didn't look quite the same horse as you would usually see. And I gather the connections as well feel that even before he got onto the track, that they didn't feel that day that he was fully himself. Having said that, Jim is right. He's worn a tongue tie. Barry Connell has told us at the start of the season that he's had a wind up, which is you never love to hear. The only thing you'd say, maybe I was looking at the record, let's say horses that have run in tongue tie or running after wind ups at Cheltenham, they kind of do tend to run to market expectations overall on the grand scheme of things. And for some reason, just looking back at Champion Chaser, good 2 milers, we don't get that wind up operation in Ireland unless the trainer tells us, but the last 10 British train winners of a Champion Chase, all at some stage in their life had a wind up. Lots of horses who've been placed in Arkles, bang there, one Arkles haven't had some sort of wind related thing at some stage in their career, but that's kind of clutching a small, because I think when you look at this horse, he does carry his head slightly as if there's something. But you go back then, and maybe early on in his career when he was winning bumpers, if you go back early even then, he does have a little touch of it as well. So to me, this is the most difficult one to solve. I think if you are a forgiving nature, the way I'd sum it up is, if you gave me a free bet, Sam, and you said you have to back something in the Arkle, I'd back Marine Nationale. But could I put my own hand in my pocket and say the hard-earned dough I'm going to go? I just don't know if I could bring myself. You have 28 chances to win at Cheltenham this year. I don't think this is the one I'll be ringing the credit union for alone and trying to get it sorted. So I'd agree with you. If you can find something at a price, I would never put you off here. And Quilixios is an intended runner.
Okay, so Quilixios could be at least going a little bit of value. And Jim, we move on to the Turners, and heaven forbid we have a British favourite. Horse has made rapid strides, Ginny's Destiny. Obviously, the comparisons being drawn because he's trained by Paul Nicholls to stage star, but with Grey Dawning also prominent in that market. Iroko, who suddenly Lazarus Light was resurrected, having been out from the season. We have a surprisingly strong hand in this particular contest.
Yeah, he looks a fine big horse, Ginny's Destiny. And if you'd said to me at the start of the season, even after he won at Cheltenham on, the November meeting, would he win a race like this? I'd have said no way. But he was really impressive last time. And whatever you think of it, handicap marks are a strong indication. They have to be of ability. That's what they're there for. And there's no question that with regard to the British novices, how much strength or depth you think there are on them may be a point for debate. That he is definitely one of the very best. Good course form, uncomplicated. Do I think he's a certainty? No, but I think he's a good chance of winning it.
Yeah, he has made giant strides. He's a very, very sound jumper. But like you, I just thought he was a handicapper, and he got beat first time out, and you thought, well, he operated in a very narrow band over hurdles. It wasn't as if he looked as if he was an up mark. I thought this was a really difficult race. Is this the race, Mark, where Gaelic Warrior would go? Because I think everyone assumed Gaelic Warrior was out of Cheltenham off the back of the disappointing match to a file. But is this the race that they would target as opposed to the Arkle if he was to line up?
It's difficult to know, because the 2 ice he has ran at Cheltenham, it's been on the other course, but they think this course could maybe suit him better. But then 2 miles might be the thing for him as opposed to 2.5. It's a tricky one. I find it hard to row in behind a horse after bombing out like that last time. Paul Townend was on a panel with him yesterday, and it came up about that race at the Dublin Racing Festival, and he felt he had gone 1,000,000 miles an hour at a really, really good clip. And then he looked across, and Factify was doing a half speed, and he said it was lights out from there, basically, I think, to paraphrase in some respect what he said. I was just disappointed that the light went out so quickly. I think there's a real good chance of a British winner here. I think Grey Dawning, if he does end up going here with an ease in the ground, I think he's a very big player for Dan Skelton. But if you wanted a bit of value, Gordon Elliott told us that Zana here is likely to come here. And in terms of, he's 20-1, 25-1. Look at this horse. He's second in 4 Grade 1s. He butts heads with the likes of Honeysuckle, Stateman, Sharjah, Bob Bollinger. I just think when you go down through your Ginny's Destinies, your Grey Dawnings, a few of them there, how many of these can say that they would be consistently competitive with horses like those over hurdles? And he was satisfactory over fences, no match for Factify at Christmas, but I really, really rate Factify. And last time at Thurles, liked his attitude late on, stepping up to 2.5 will help him. I just think he's probably overpriced, and I wouldn't put you off him each way, but I wouldn't be shocked now if this one stayed in Britain with Grey Dawning.
Yeah, okay. Grey Dawnings, I must admit, I've never really warmed to him for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, just the way he tends to jump left in the closing stages, go through the wing at Warwick at one stage in terms of the upward brush. I'd be very nervous heading down towards the last. He obviously missed the second last that day when he almost certainly would have beaten Ginny's Destiny. So it is fascinating. But yeah, he's an interesting horse, Danny. You're quite right, Mark, because there is room for improvement in his jumping, isn't there? He's got from one side to the other. It's one of those, if he improved and found another 5 lengths and be a real player. On the other hand, you might find the tempo of a championship race at Cheltenham just increases those errors and puts him out of it. But he's definitely an interesting horse at prices. And the last of the novice chases we really talk about, I suppose, is the Brown Advisory, which, as Mark's already mentioned, Factor File. They did go fast. The sectional timing shows that match was the most true run race of the Dublin Racing Festival over fences. But it is a good clash because Stay Away Faye will have learnt quite a lot from running outside novice company. And this is a proper Anglo-Irish clash. We're going to talk about another one, the Queen Mother, in a moment or two's time, Mark. But yeah, Factor File has become very, very short off the back of that win in Ireland.
To be honest, Richard, of the short ones, I wouldn't mind them even at that price. Like I just get the vibe that, you know, all the way along they've taught an awful lot of them. Even though actually I think at Cheltenham pressed morning time last year before you ran at the bumper, I don't even know if you got a mention. But you know, sometimes that can be a positive too, can't it? But in general, Willie from word go has been mad about him. You look at last year's champion bumper, huge run for a horse, you know, that doesn't look necessarily like a bumper horse in a champion bumper where Everton Bar 1 of the 21 have won since that race. You know, I wasn't too upset first time up. That time when he got beat by American Mike was the same sort of window that Ballyburn got beaten in. All of Willie's at that period just seemed to be a little lacking sharpness or fitness, whatever you want to call it. But I thought he was deadly at Christmas. And, you know, to do what he was doing, for all that, you know, it's so hard to quantify the final section of that race when there's nothing to go with him. I just think he could be really top drawers. Watching back clips of Florida Pearl, getting myself excited here, seeing a bumper horse go from there to Sun Alliance the next season. And yeah, a long way to go before you ever get near a Florida Pearl. But the way Willie talks about him, it wouldn't be a million to one. For me, he's one of the bankers of the week from the shorties.
Sam, now you've been getting to being our technical consultant and put your BetVictor hat back on now. Now you're sorting it out. Amongst those races that we've chatted about, both novice hurdles and the novice chases, anything that you're particularly pulling their tail, particularly well supported, being safe on or being aggressive on?
I suppose two things, Richard. Just when we had Gav on, we've boosted Hewitt to 16-1, which is the best I can see out there with non-runner, no bet. So if anyone likes the sound of the Hewitt fairy tale continuing in the Gold Cup, you can go and get involved in that 16-1 at BetVictor. It's just on our standard Gold Cup market that's been boosted. So there's 2 horses in the Gold Cup so far we've boosted. But let's just touch through those races we were talking about. And I suppose some of the more interesting bits and pieces, Marine Nationale, believe it or not, up before that DRF run, was our worst result anti-post, which just shows how much support there was for him going into that race. And right now, that Arkle picture is pretty messy, if I'm honest with you. There's a lot of spread of cash around. And I think it'll be very curious. These sort of on-the-day markets, we see such strength in them. I do think that's going to be quite telling, especially in amongst those Willie Mullins runners, if he's got multiples in there. I would love to see Gaelic Warrior go for the shorter trip. I don't think he will, but I would certainly, I'd sooner back him at that, strangely, than the middle distance. And just on a quick point with regards to Factor File, 4-5 for that Brown Advisory with us. I'm a massive fan of Stay Away Faye, though. I think there's a proper clash between those two. And I tell you what, Mark, I'm quite happy to have that 11-4 on my side against your odds on Poke there. I really, really like this horse. I think this could just be the I don't want to say comeback of Paul Nicholls at the Cheltenham Festival because that's just silly, but I just think this horse really is a lovely staying chaser.
Okay, Jim, you can have the casting vote there. What do you prefer, the 11-4 Stay Away?
I like them both. Would I have a bet? No, because I prefer Factor File, and I've missed all the prices, so I'll watch the race. To me, he makes a beautiful shape over his fences. People that I think if you follow form closely, you have to pay attention to speed figures. I don't slave over them, but the people that do say that despite it being a 2-runner race, that chase at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival was very strongly run. With regard to Gaelic Warrior, I couldn't possibly back a horse. I mean, he literally somersaulted because he was so tired over that fence he fell at. He had a horrible experience. But no, factor file for me in the in what looks like a match.
So we've got 15 minutes to go. So we're just going to briefly touch on some of those races we've already spoken about. We've spoken about the Champion Hurdle. It's impossible for us to pass comment and without knowing Constitution Hill A is going to run or B what horse is going to turn up. But I will just pick up on the mares. Lossiemouth, obviously there is potential that she could still be switched, but Mark, the vibes have been right the way from that camp. They're not going to, that she will run in the mares. The only danger for her, I suppose, is if it came up really, really soft over the extra trip, because she had such a potent turn of foot over 2 miles the other day.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, because she is unproven at the trip. I just think in general that a lot of these mares maybe are at the other end of their career where they've hit the heights and maybe are on the decline. I'd rather take a chance on one and up. Look, at Lossiemouth, she's going to be short. I think I'd be surprised if she got beat, but I think the value could be Gala Marceau. I think there was an overreaction to her getting beaten last time, and even the previous run with Astro Diamond, there was a bit of encouragement. You have to forgive a bad run on atrocious ground. But if you did, you are getting rewarded with a price. She's bang there, beat Lossiemouth. I won't bring that one up again from the Dublin Racing Festival last year. It was a Christmas, but has been really bang there in Lossiemouth's kind of range all last season. I just wouldn't give up on her. I think there's a chance there that you will see a much better version of her. It'll need to be. But I'd rather take a chance on her at that type of price than necessarily a Marie's Rock, who I feel to get back to the summit again, there's a fair bit of work to do to turn it around with Lossiemouth.
Yeah, she has a very odd way of going. Persuaded to win last time by James, which was a good effort. But she's a little bit strange. Strange enough, the horse that lost beat Love Embois up in trip. If it came up muddy, they're her conditions. She's won there. So I agree with you. I think the angle there is possibly each way if it comes up soft. She's going to first go at the Champion Chase. This is one of my favourite races of potentially this year, I think.
So you asked me?
Yeah, do you want to have first go at the Champion Chase? I said this is set up as one of the best races for me of the week, actually.
How do we bet in that, Sam?
Well, how short do you think, Jim? I suppose would be the question on the Champion Chase, which it's one of those, isn't it? I suppose some people will view it that it's likely to end up being a coronation of sorts, but the prices at the moment 2 to 5 El Fabiolo, John Bond 3 to 1. A few people interestingly saw a clip that at the races put out today, and I saw people suggesting John Bond's jumping doesn't look as good as it used to be over a fence. Edward Stone next in at 7 to 1, and Fernie Hollow, the enigma that I'm sure Mark might be able to give us a line on, 7 to 1. Very curious to see what people's views are on that particular horse. But Jim, I'll let you take it away on the Champion Chase.
Well, it's very hard to oppose El Fabiolo in terms of ability and ratings. He's miles clear. But as Henrietta Knight made the point in an article she's done for the Racing Post website on Cheltenham, he does have the tendency to make the odd howler. He doesn't look as though he's the most natural of jumpers, I think is a fair way. But, considering that, he's got an amazing record. He's a really good horse, and he will be very hard to beat, but he's priced accordingly. I was at Newbury, as I think Richard was, and you were, Sam, last time when Edward Stone was rejuvenated under totally different tactics. And bar one fence where I think he was asked to stand off near the end and he put down. A lot of his jumping was absolutely brilliant. He looked as though he really enjoyed himself. In that sort of form, he could run a good race. But do I want to oppose El Fabiolo? No. Do I want to back him? No. As Mark said earlier, and it's pretty good advice, there's 28 puzzles to solve. I'd rather have odds more in my favour to get involved. So it's a race to watch for me.
Let's not forget we've had a shorter priced favourite beaten in this race from the same yard in Duvan, of course. Yeah. And, Lossiemouth, we sit there and look at that 4 to 7. And no one wants to see this happen, but we have to be realists. We do remember what happened with Annie Power. We do remember what happened.
Don't be doing this to us, Sam. Don't be doing this to us, please.
We just have to remind people. It's just the right thing to do. I had at the Irish Field, were talking to me in the lead up to this, and I said they're not bankers until they cross the line, until everything's happened. Then they're home and hosed. It's easy on paper. I get it. We all sit there and look at it, and it's hard to oppose them, but they can't all win.
Well, lengthen them then.
Hey. That's a very fair point.
Right, one more championship race. We've sort of touched on the Gold Cup already with the Galopin de Chon. chats with JJ, and we also did that with Banbridge. So I'm just going to throw the stayers in as the last one we'll look at in depth. And I want naps from everyone and an outsider, and then just a little bit of housekeeping at the end. So anyone got any strong views of the stayers? It's our generation, Jim, this race, isn't it? You know,
Are we going back to the old Spa hurdles and things like that?
Well, Joshua Drescher might have run in one of them, to be honest. He's been going that long. It's like, you know.
In terms of form, there's not a lot between a lot of these, and that's not to denigrate them. The scenario is that we're likely to get a strongly run race, and although, you know, he comes into the category, there's not a lot between them. Crambo is less exposed than most of them. And he was very game in winning the long walk hurdle at Ascot last time. Just think that wasn't a particularly strongly run race. I just think that if they go a million miles an hour, which I think is a strong likelihood, he's a youngish horse. He's not unexposed. He's had a fair few races, but he is improving, and he'd do for me in a hard race.
If we assume that Irish Point might well head back to the champion now, Mark, is Tiupu a very, very valid substitute?
I think so. You know, when you're beating in one of these, I never love going back in when you're not getting well rewarded the following year. That's just a nagging thing in my head, but I think he should have won last year. Davy Russell, for all you would love it to be the fairy tale return from, it didn't unfold on a few of these last year. It's very rare that it goes wrong for him, but it did here. I thought Tiupu should have won. I hate this straight to Cheltenham stuff, but I do think for a horse like this, where you know he's good fresh, I might like they don't get to see him, but if I was a supporter, I could get on board with it here. So, you know, it sounds like this has just been the one date circled all year. You know, if the ground was soft in particular, it's going to suit him. He's won a Galmoy hurdle on 3 miles at Gorn, heavy ground. That's proper testing stuff. So I'd just be a little bit disappointed if a Dashel Drasher or a Paisley Park would win. Obviously, be a brilliant result, popular result, but if that's the standard, or even a Sire de Burley, for all that he has been an incredible horse, I'd like to think it would take a bit more to win it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Sire de Burley, because we never mention him, and he always comes out to be priced. Just finally on that, you mentioned the question about Home by the Lee. Flooring Porter might turn up. There are sort of some scenarios where, as you say, if it is an open year without a great benchmark of Tiupu just having an aversion to Cheltenham, then those sort of results aren't completely impossible, are they?
No, it's not. No, and Flooring Porter, I would have been strong on him last year, but just this year, I don't love switching back from fences. But Home by the Lee is a funny horse. I think they tried to make the run, and I could see exactly why last time. I thought it was a good idea with no pace on, but he just hates front running. Like he is a little bit odd, I'd say, as a horse, more than some of us. But he just does. There's something about him. I think he is a little bit quirky in that sense. If they did go a nice gallop, I think there's no way you'd see the sort of performance you saw last time. Again, though, it's Home by the Lee, good enough to win a stairs hurdle. Maybe in a substandard year, but maybe it could be that, as you say, if Tiupu did bomb out.
Right, we've got over 5 minutes. So very quickly, let's go up with our charity bets with Sam and a dark horse to follow. I'll go first to give you two a little bit of time to think. Galvin is my charity bet horse in the cross country, where I think he probably will be the preferred and can take over from Delta Work in that sort of baton that was passed on by Tiger Roll. And Mill Green is my favourite horse in the Pertemps. He finishes third in big handicaps at Cheltenham and Liverpool at 20-1. And he showed signs of me the other day when I was writing him off at 12 that there's a little bit fire. It was Exeter. I saw him make some progress and thinking, okay, I'll give you another year, because he's been a fantastic horse in the Pertemps, where, of course, there are fewer qualifiers this year. It's probably not quite as strong as in past years. So Galvin's my charity bet. Horse to follow from Cheltenham at a big price is Mill Green. Go on, Jim. One of each.
Yeah, I picked 2 out last night for Sam. I think of the shorties, as I said, I think Brighter Days Ahead around 7-4. I don't think that's a bad bet of the horses that are exposed and up there and being in the headlines. I think she should be very hard to beat. In the handicaps, I twisted Sam's arm for a little bit each way for charity on Springwell Bay of John Joe O'Neill's, who just failed to get up in a qualifier at Musselburgh last time. But it's a horse who's still relatively unexposed, got course form, in good form himself. Could there be something unexposed in there? Probably 1 or 2 of the Irish, but I still think he'll run a really good race. And most bookmakers, Sam, are going at least 5 places. So hopefully he'll do likewise.
Yeah, he's a really interesting horse, Jim. I'm also make sure you extend that to include the Coral Cup if he goes there, because I think that might still be a possibility too.
I was fairly sure listening to AJ the other day at the weight that he is going to go for the listen, plans can change because the ground changes. But I think that's the plan.
I love the horse. Just wasn't sure he really saw 3 out strong. But anyway, he's a definitely well handicapped. I think you're on the right track there. Mark, what about you?
Am I allowed a double, Sam, for the best bet, or am I restricted to a single?
We'll boost one of yours. So, and I think you want something short, Mark, don't you?
Look, if you want 2 winners, I think Ballyburn and Factifile in the Supreme, the Brown Advisory. I think that's a very solid double. But one at a bigger price. I like Giovinco if they run him in the Ultima. Thought he had kind of Corrick Rambler-ish vibes, even in Christmas. Are you the same? Jason, I'm very, very happy to see that, Jim. But, yeah, no.
I agree. He's an interesting horse, off that mark,
You know what? If Jim is in my camp, let's go Giovinco for the Ultima maybe as the best bet then. We'll scrap the shorties. Just even at Kempton, like you're jumping left against Ile France in front, you just can't afford to do it anyway at Christmas in a grade one like that, let alone when you have a horse of his nature of you in front. And stay away fade. The Sandown run was a hell of a run. Just thought double figure price. Giovinco run a big one. Maybe for maybe not so dark on the way things have unfolded, but I know the way you're thinking in the Kim Muir, big player for Gavin Cromwell. I kind of had Percival de Galois in my mind for the Kim Muir, but the British handicapper didn't miss him now. On their meeting from last time at Leopardstown, for all that I know the way you're thinking was a bit disappointing, I know the way you're thinking is 1 higher, and Percival de Galois is 12 higher, and he fell at the last. So I think at those revised weights, I'll take a flyer and I know the way you're thinking in the Kim Muir, JP and Gavin Cromwell.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a list of horses that will be boosted. Good Time Johnny was the one, Mark, that I thought was done for by the British handicapper, whereas Milantino obviously sent enough. That got top 10. We've got a couple of minutes before we go. Jim, we should point out racing over the 2 days at Newbury coming up, including a big boost to the Greatwood with £100,000, second Premier race day for Newbury on the 2nd, but 2 good cards.
Yeah, particularly on Saturday. And obviously Sam will be in attendance because they're sponsoring the main race again very generously this time, and as you rightly pointed out. And in Grandeur Dame of Alan King's, course chairman Dominic Burke and leading shareholder Tim Sider have a horse who's well fancied, hasn't had a busy season. I'm not saying he's been laid out for this, but they're both going on Saturday with their families, and some people like to follow things like that. But he's a horse from a stable in pretty good form. I'm not saying he's a certainty because the ground might be pretty testing if what Richard said about the rain down south materializes, because it's pretty soft tomorrow anyway. But he's a horse that could give you a good run for your money.
Okay, so that's a couple of names to suggest there. Kick off at 1:50, as I say, it's forecast to rain pretty heavily into the morning, and then obviously 1:20 kicks off the card on Saturday. A couple of races there on ITV with the Greatwood and the handicap steeplechase, and then we said we've got races like the Jackie Upton Trophy, which I know those of you that go regularly to Newbury will be interested in as well. So I hope you enjoyed the preview. There's still so much, of course, up in the air. Thanks to Jim, thanks to Sam, and thanks to Mark. We wish you all the very best. Sorry, is there one more to go?
Before we go, I said, look, come on, can we boost something of our selection significantly? Factor-File's been boosted to evens with us, which I think is the best in the village, non-runner, no bet. Mark, we're taking you on. Clearly, Chris Poole, our head of trading, is a big stay-away fan as well. So there we go. We'll boost all the selections that guys have put up throughout the show. So just go visit betvictor.com and you'll be able to see them in the respective markets. They're just very busy at the moment, feverishly trying to make sure we can get marks laid in the book. And we'll see, Mark, who comes out on top. I think it'll be stay away fade, but I've had egg on my face before and I'm prepared to have it again.
Well, last year I got unmerciful abuse here about Shishkin taking him on. You're telling me, no, lad, Mark, it's your green, white and gold glasses on you. What are you doing? And look at that. I think Factifile will eat him. I think he'll eat him.
Well, we shall see. Are you going to be there, Mark, for the week?
I'll see you there on the Wednesday, hopefully, Sam. Hopefully. If not, you won't see me, but hopefully you will.
I certainly hope so.
Excellent. Jim, for your time as well. Look forward to seeing you. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to BetVictor for their support of this Cheltenham preview. Good luck to Mark, to Jim. Good luck all your selections, and we look forward to seeing you at the festival, and if not, of course, at Newbury in the next couple of days. So from all of us here, very good night.